All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Kimmo. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Kimmo Pörsti accepted our invitation to a show. Kimmo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Claudio. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
No problem. Kimmo, let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family, and how old were you when you started, taking guitar lesson or drum lesson and so on and so forth?
Oh, I could say it was more or less of the musical family. Both my parents were musical, but it was not that serious, just a piano playing for a hobby or such. But I could say that when I was about 7 or 8, I was more or less forced to join the choir and also to start taking piano lessons. And of course it was very good, but maybe after all not that good, because it took about many weeks. It took about 3-4 nights or evenings every week. So for such a young kid it was a little bit too much, and of course it was a classical style. So maybe my friends have asked me about their 7-year-old, should he or she start playing, and I have said that if he wants to play soccer or tennis, let him do that, and when he's ready for music, then let he start that. Don't force him. So it was a bit too much for me. So I was not a brilliant pianist or whatsoever. I took about 4 or 5 years of piano lessons, and I was also in a choir. But when I was around 12 years old, then I found drums in my school, and then I got to play them for the first time. So that was it. It was gone. So luckily my parents allowed me to turn into drums, and I also took lessons for some years with drums, and because the motivation was much higher, I think I proceeded much better than with piano.
Got it.
That was the beginning, and of course there were some bands at that time. Excuse me. Also playing quite ordinary rock music, but for quite young age I was turning into progressive rock, unlike any other schoolmate in my school. They didn't even know about those bands, but one starting point was Deep Purple, because my older brother was listening to it.
Yeah.
And through Deep Purple I bought a record of Ian Gillan band, their first, and then especially the Clear Air Turbulence. And it was not heavy rock. It was a lot more like a fusion prog. And I was impressed of the drummer. What is this? This is pretty good. And also Roger Glover did a solo album called Elements around that time, 77, 78. And that was very far from Deep Purple. So that kind of by accident, it took me towards the prog. And it didn't take a long time when I took my old nonsense LPs to second-hand shop, and I switched them to Emerson, Lake at Palmer's pictures at exhibition, and that was that was it.
Yeah.
I was also very lucky that I had a neighbor called Jari Uusikartano. He was about 4 or 5 years older than me. He was to become a journalist in the best music magazine in Finland. So he knew all the bands like Gentle Giant and Yes. So I was like 13, 14. So I visited him. I think I was pain in the ass. I visited him frequently, and I was really enjoying of hearing all that music that I had never heard. He introduced Yes to me, and Little Feat, Lenny White, that fusion stuff. So it was a great school to me, and definitely nobody in my school knew anything about those bands. And then I went to Ruisrock Festival in 77, and I saw Wigwam there, and the next winter I bought their Being album. I don't know if you have heard it, but it's probably their most difficult one to start with. And I listened to it as long as I started to understand it, and and it's still a masterpiece. But it was probably not the best one to start with.
Yeah. Well,
And
it was easy. It was easy for you to buy like secondhand vinyl. Were there a lot of store around your area, your neighborhood, and downtown?
I lived in Tampere, which is quite active musically, and there were some good record stores at that time. So it was not too bad. Of course, the financially, when you were a kid at that time, one single new LP, it costed so much that you couldn't just go and buy it. It was like 30 marks, Finnish marks or so. So it was a very big thing to buy one LP. You had to plan it in beforehand when you were 13 or 14 years of age.
Yeah. Were your parents in here in the United States, since they were musicians, they will give you like allowance if you do the shore, if you cut the grass, if you help your dad, whatever, they will give you, I don't know, 20 francs, right, a week or every 2 weeks. So you need...
Yes, something like that. Unfortunately, it was not coming in a steady base, so I got something every now and then from my grandmother and from my parents. So it was not stable. So it was quite like I could say that when I got something, I usually spent it for music quite fast, maybe too fast. But that's what the musicians do, and the record collectors.
I remember I grew up in a family in Chile. I told you that my music was important to my dad. So my dad had a lot of music, and I mean a lot of music, jazz.
Yes.
Jazz. So I began listening to music when I was a baby, literally a baby. And by the time I was 14 or so, I bought my first 3 vinyl record. I think which had been like Genesis and Pat Metheny, and then probably Tangerine Dream because I like electronic music. And then I came to the next day, and nowadays it's so easy because I go to many stores where you can buy vinyls for, some new obviously, but some the used one in good shape for $7-8 something. So everybody could here, at least in the United States, can buy this. It's very inexpensive nowadays, So
yeah, that's true.
And there are many stores around here. That in where I live in the border with Maryland and Washington D.C. I live in Northern Virginia, and every band come this way, and I mean literally every band from the Genesis guy, from Peter Gabriel, Pink Floyd guys, Pat Benatar, Blondie, Led Zeppelin, blah 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 blah, and so on. So I'm lucky that I'm able to see a lot of shows here.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm lucky for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still very unhappy that I was a little too young when Camel visited Tampere. I didn't see them, and I was just a little too young.
I think Camel postponed the tour. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, due to health reasons. So I think nobody knows. Lucky that I have interviewed, 2 people from Camel as well, and people that used to be with Camel as well, and they don't know if the boss is going to come out good out of the surgery. So hopefully we'll see Camel again next year for the last time. So
yes, let's hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I never seen Camel myself live. So.
Yes.
So it will be good. Were you in any bands? Eventually, you were 15, 16. You were playing drums. Were you in any bands in high school? And
yes, I played in about 2-3 different bands. Quite a lot with my older brother. He played guitar, and we had another band with the younger fellows. So the music was not so. We played what we could, not so much prog at that time, but we learned. You talk about my parents, I must say that at age 15, I was invited to a little better band. There were some older guys. They were like 18, 19 years old. So those were the big boys. And
Yeah.
my father was very suspicious that maybe they are just drinking alcohol and doing bad things. So he was not thrilled. So
Yeah.
that's quite funny that when I went to the 100% innocent band rehearsal, I had to lie to my father that I'm just going to see some friends when he was asking where I'm going, but I was going
Yeah.
to play music in that
Yeah.
band. But I couldn't say that I'm going to play with those big boys.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. I know what you mean. And eventually, right? Eventually, you finish high school, and you have the option to university, where your
Yes,
parents telling you forget about music, go to school. You're not going to make any money. The life of a musician is very difficult. Forget about music. Go
yes,
to school. Go to medical school or become an engineer, whatever. Or did you have the conversation with you?
definitely. Yes, I will get into that. But before just one thing about high school that was very important for my musical development. Uh, uh, I was in a music-oriented high school. It was
Yeah.
like the emphasis was on the music, so we had a double as much music as in other high schools, and I was blessed because many fantastic musicians and singers came from different parts of the city to that same school. So but there were even some people that I made records many 10, 20 years after that because we became friends. And my friend Mika Syväniemi, with him, we started to make music for Finnish television when I was still in high school. And it was very big thing because in Finland we had about 2 channels at that time. There was a commercial one channel for commercial television, but nothing else. So if you were in the television, that was a big thing, and it was for the Finnish broadcasting company Yleisradio, and we could make our own music, and it was for the kids shows for the children, and of course it was fantastic. We could play all the instruments ourselves, and we had flutists every now and then and one saxophone player, but then I realized that this is definitely what I want to do. This is fantastic, and they even pay me money.
Wow.
So I was aiming to be a musician, but my father was a old school man, so he had a clear view what I should do to go to university. There was not really discussion about that. So I kind of thought that I would do sort of the compromise that I would study something, but I would mainly be a professional musician. But that to help things out, I would be both. But there was some tragedy that happened that changed things. My ears failed me when I was about 17, 18. My hearing was good, and it still is good, but tinnitus became my permanent friend around 18 years old, even though I tried to protect my ears, but they were, and they still are, very sensitive. So also the some distorted sounds started to hurt my ears. So that was very big tragedy for me. I had to think if I can make my living out of playing music, if it's possible or not. And that time during the late 70s, if you talked about tinnitus, people thought you are crazy. Now about 50% of the musicians have it, so and about 50% of the audience has it, so it's quite common. But at that time, you even had to think if you tell about it or not, and that sort of made my father to win. So after high school, I applied to the University of Helsinki to study law, and it was quite difficult place to get in. So I had to work quite a lot, but I succeeded to get in. But but to be honest, it took only 1 or 2 years when I had my own band going on in Helsinki again, and the music was again big part of my life. I could never leave it. So it must be like a sort of a paradox or paranoid competition between the two brain cells. One is the creative one that likes to feel and to create and just jump into things, and the other side is the lawyer one who wants to be precise and logical. But especially at this moment, the musical side is definitely winning.
Good for you, man. It was good for you. And
Yes.
what besides the records and on American European band that we listen, were any memory do you have of the Finnish music scene, of the big band in your country, like Wigwam? Feel free to elaborate on that if you have any memory from them.
I am a little old, so my for me the most important Finnish bands are probably from the 70s.
Mhm.
Of course there are great new bands at the moment as well, but for me Wigwam was the big one, and as I told, I started with the most difficult one, the Being, and then eventually I got all the records, and as you probably know, the Being was mostly a masterpiece by Jukka Gustafsson, their keyboard player, and I have been very fortunate to be able to play him with some concerts later on, and he's a very nice fellow.
Yeah.
But not Wigwam music, some other music, but anyway. So Wigwam was probably the number one, and their albums have they still sound as fresh as they did then. So they were, most of them they were excellent, and it was commonly considered that Tasavallan Presidentti was the other big one, but big one in the 70s. It was not that important for me. I preferred Wigwam more, probably because I like the keyboards so much, and Tasavallan Presidentti didn't have always keyboards at all. But I was also lucky that somewhere around 89 or 90, I was playing in the band called Jouko Kantola Band. He was a professional keyboard player, and it was sort of the fusion gospel band. And Jouko Kantola knew Juhani Aaltonen from Tasavallan Presidentti, and we played one concert with Juhani in Temppeli-Aukio Church, instrumental music. So it was a great experience for me. And after 30 years, last November, I made a couple recordings with Juhani Aaltonen. He's probably about 85 years old now or so, but still going on with flute.
Good for you, man. And eventually, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, one important band for me was Far Out. It's more like a fusion type. They only made one album, but it's great. They should be much more better known. But that's what happened with prog bands, you know. Those three come to my mind, and there are most likely there are many others, but I should think about it little bit. But Wigwam is the one at the top if you think Finnish prog music in the international scale.
Got it, perfect. And then eventually, right? You end up releasing your first solo recording under the name of My Hinem, right? In 90.
Correct.
Yeah. Feel free to elaborate how your first band, high school, admired a lot of people, and eventually say, no, I gotta go on my own. I want to release my own stuff to find my own music, my own style, right? And it was difficult to release that album.
Yes, sort of. It's a long story, and it's quite a tragical one as well. We, as I was living already in Helsinki, but I still had many musician friends in Tampere. So we got a very good place to rehearse. It was 100 square meters, so very big room. I think that's something 300 square foot or maybe even more, and about 6 meters tall. So we built it in a amateur studio and built a mixing room inside there, and the equipment was still very expensive, but we managed to buy a 16-track Fostex recorder and a mixer, and we started to record things. And we also had a band, we call it Rockport at that time, in the same circle. And immediately after we had everything, and we did gigs, and they were fine, but somehow everything fell apart. One guy went to Germany, and somebody went to other countries, and so the momentum was sort of lost, and it became clear when our driving force in composition, Mika Jaakkola, he was diagnosed a brain tumor, and he was 33 years old, and he had just become a doctor of medicine, and he was diagnosed a brain tumor, and it was very serious. Anyway, before we would tear down everything, I wanted to have some use for that studio. So I wanted to, as we couldn't make it as a band, I decided that I will just make a solo album, but I was too shy to use my own name, so I used the title Maahinen, which is like a goblin or something like that, a little nasty creature, leprechaun or something like that in a Finnish folklore. So we recorded that in 1996, and it was released in 1997, and that was the same year when Mika Jaakkola, he died, and there are about 2-3 songs of his in that album, and so it was a little tragical. We had to play some of the, sorry, I may be crying, we had to play some of those songs in his funeral, and that was the hardest gig I have ever done.
It's good that you did it, and it was in a way honoring him with,
Exactly. There was no way of telling no. Even I knew it would be hard.
Of course.
But
absolutely.
we got the CD out, and it's a sort of a prog album, but there is I have more wide love for music than only prog. So there is some bluegrass and even some sort of a jazz and even cinematic music.
Perfect, great. And you were part of at the time a very good band, Miss Season, that had a lot of jazz influences. Feel free to elaborate how they found that musical style, and a little bit. You were testing different things. The jazz, the prog, and they were trying to find your own identity. And Miss Season is, if I may, a little more jazzy, right? If you want that.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It had to do with the fact that I moved from Helsinki to Hämeenlinna in the year 2000. That had been my long time plan, because it was easier. Helsinki was very expensive place, so it was easier to buy a house suitable for making music, and so there was a nice basement. It took some years to get everything done, but around 2004 it was complete, and I found my friend Keijo Hakala, who had been in that Jouko Kantola fusion gospel band that I told you in Helsinki, and I found that he was also in Hämeenlinna, and he's a very good bass player. So we started to form a group, and we found excellent players. It was an interesting, mostly from Hämeenlinna, and Timo Kajamies was from Turku. It was interesting band because about the half of the band were proggers, prog fanatics like me, but the other half were definitely jazz, not fusion, but jazz players. Yeah. So there was always, like, I don't know the English word, sorry, because I'm not a native, but like some competition if we could go towards jazz or towards prog. So you can hear that in the music, and there was a lot of talent in that group, and we made completely 3 records. But that's what happens. I saw your great interview with Ton Serpentsail, and he explained the same things, that sometimes just musicians go in their own way, and I was very sad that band had a lot of talent, but I was the one who was pulling everybody. Let's do something and let's record, and we did quite many nice concerts also, but it was leading to nowhere, unfortunately, because when you have a band of the five members, it's better that you have 5 active members who have a common goal. If there is only one who has a goal and the others follow, then the result is never good. And maybe different people had different goals. Of course, it's possible. But I'm proud of all the albums that we did. But it became clear that unfortunately there was no future. So when I quit, then nothing happened. When I stopped pulling things, unfortunately nothing happened. It just dissolved, and that's a shame. But that's what happened. For me, it was an important band with a great musicians anyway, and I learned a lot, and that was maybe the first serious band of my own, if I could say.
Were you guys playing, touring a little bit, making a little bit of money? Were you on your own, paying your own bills, or you still living at home, or no?
I was already close to my 40s, and the other guys were about the same age. So some of them were professional musicians, or music teachers. Yes, at least three of the fellows were professionals, and I guess, yeah, and about the other half were semi-pro. So we made some money, but of course it was not a business. But we did some nice concerts, and there was a Finnish cultural foundation who gave us quite a lot of money for the concert tour. So we made in 2006, when Woodlands came out, our second album, we made many that money helped us to arrange concerts in the biggest city of the southern Finland, and that was a nice experience indeed.
Then you were part of you also work with Paidarion group together with Jan Olof, right? What can you tell us about that band, and how different was that to the previous Miss season one more?
It was quite different. It started in 2009. It happened about in the same time when I saw that maybe Mist Season is not going to live very far. So I started to do some other things, and I recorded an album for the band called Progression. It's like a fusion, more Mahavishnu style or fusion type of rock, and then eventually I joined the band, and there was a famous Finnish bass player called Jan-Olof Strandberg, and I got to know him, and I was frightened, but I talked with my wife that could we ask Jan-Olof to join Paidarion, and I finally dared to call him, and I have this thing that I would like to form a band, would you like to join? He said, of course. So that was it. And so that's why bass is in a quite important role in the Paidarion albums. And 2009 we made our first album that is sung in Finnish, and the text were by my wife Pirkko. So almost all of the songs are with lyrics. So that was the biggest difference. Mid-season was almost completely instrumental. There were some songs with vocals, but only 2-3 or so. In the gigs we had vocals, but not in the albums. So then the lineup changed, and in 2011 we made a Behind the Curtains with a more steady lineup, and Jan-Olof invited Michael Manring from San Francisco to play some concerts with us in 2011, and he also plays in the Behind the Curtains, and that's already sung in English. There is also some vocals from Rob Price from Texas, and a new Finnish vocalist, Elina Hautakoski, who she sang in Finnish.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the same thing happened after we did some concerts after the album came out, but it maybe about 1 year or so the musicians went to their own direction. So Jan-Olof and myself were again alone. So we had to accept that Paidarion is our baby. We would like to have those musicians were fantastic, but that's what happens. I don't know if I'm just so difficult person, but I'm trying to be democratic, so I don't understand, but that's how it goes. But in 2015, I invited some of my musical friends from Europe, Robert Webb from the group England, and Jenny Darren, fantastic singer from England also, and Akos Bokati Bokor, or Bokati Bokor Akos, as he says, from Hungarian, who lives in Romania, and they came to, and we played some concerts in Finland, and with Jan-Olof and Otso Pakarinen as Aka Ozone player from Finland, and we liked it so much that Akos suggested that let's make an album. So in 2016 we released an album called Paidarion Finlandia Project with those. It was the same repertoire that we used in the concerts, some covers and some original songs, and even one England song from their classic Garden Shed album from 70s.
Good for you. And eventually you arrived to the beginning of the excellent Samurai of Prog project. Feel free to elaborate on the step that you were taking until the formation in the group, right?
Yes, Mid-season has a major role in that. Around that time, when we started recording with Mid-season, I realized those tribute albums that Finnish progressive rock association Colossus was releasing together with a French label Musea, and Mid-season also participated in 3, 4, 5 of those albums. So I got to know Marco Bernard through that activity. Marco was the executive producer in those albums, so they were like his baby. He was the one how they came out. So that's how I got to know Marco, and it was probably also in 2009 when I, as my surprise, I got a phone call from Marco. He was in the great hurry. He said he should record one song for an Italian album, and could I play drums for it? I said sure, if I'm good enough, and I managed to play them in a couple of weeks, and that was it. As Marco said says there was no turning back. We have had a very intense cooperation ever since. And Samurai of Prog, they have been criticized about the name, I know, and one could say it's a little interesting. Let's say it that way. But there is a rather good reason behind that. It's Marco's nickname, the Samurai of Prog. So it was his project, and he made some songs for those tribute albums as Samurai of Prog, and there were other musicians like Akos Pokatipokor and some others. They made 2 or 3 songs, and Marco suggested to me that let's make a whole album of the cover of the prog songs that he likes, and let's make a covers. And I said okay, but Steve Unruh was also joining about at the same time as I was, and pretty soon it became obvious that it's not a Marcos project anymore. It was evolving to become a real band. So the name stayed, but the the artist was different. It was not anymore a solo album by Marco. It was a band called Samurai of Prog, and as the album was rather well received, we decided to continue, and we have never changed the name after that. That's the story behind the name. And
if it works, continue, right? Yeah. So
yes, and somehow already then the main idea was that us 3, we were the core members of the band, but as Marco has very wide connections around the world with the prog people, he was able to invite wonderful guests already in the first album. I just thought about it. We had a John Davison from Yes. Of course, he was not in Yes at that time. We had Guy LeBlanc from Camel, rest in peace, poor Guy, and we had Michael Mandring and Roine Stolt. So I was quite, I felt very humble and honored to be in that kind of company myself.
Yeah, those are big names, man.
Yes.
And so at the beginning, right, the first 2 albums were, covers of prog classic, and then eventually, right, you went from The Secret in Disguise, the group's second album, until you first work completely make your own song. I think that would have been the Imperial Hotel in 2014, correct? Yeah. So
yes, correct. Yes, to be precise, already in Undercover, the first album, there are 2 original songs.
I see.
One is by David Myers, wonderful piano intro for the Genesis Lamia, but there is also The Promise that is composed by me. It's some sort of a medieval prog in a camel style. I made a new version for the Omnibus CD box that is even longer. I think it's about 9 minutes or so, and I made a new mix, so I'm more happy with that one. And also in the Secret of Disguise, there is a song called Sweet Iphigenia. It's based on a simple song of mine, very just like a draft or spine, and it was given to Linus Kose. Later he is known, oh sorry, no, I missed your he has been playing in Englagård, for example, and Linus made absolutely fantastic arrangement for that musical idea of mine. You could still recognize that the melody was there, but it was something fantastic. And Steve and we came to an idea that this is what we want to do. We don't want to be a cover band. Let's just take this path wherever it leads. So for the next album, the Imperial Hotel, the idea was to make only original music, but we made this decision that Steve is very active with his other groups, as you know. He has made a lot of solo albums, and he has his own group Resistor, and he's also a member of the UPF and Unitopia, so he's very busy. And it somehow just happened that we also had Steve's composition in Secrets of Disguise, the long Charles Ward thriller. But anyway, it just happened that as Marco knew those fantastic composers, he started inviting them if they could send us songs that we could include in our albums, and that's how it happens. Robert Webb is very important role in the Imperial Hotel, and of course the main song, the Imperial Hotel, is not completely original, as some kind of demo was made already in 70s, but we made a new version which was even longer with Robert, and there were the other songs were completely original, and I was very happy to have Mr. Yoshihisa Shimizu from Kenzo to participate in that limoncello track from Robert Webb in the same album as well.
Oh, all the big thing. And I noticed that at the time, the music was great, but at the same time, you guys thought, well, we want to make it pretty, more aesthetic. So the packaging, the inner books, the visual art, it became very, very important as well. No, just music was important to us, but the graphic need to be important. I think you end up working with Ed Unitsky, which is a true graphic genius, if you will. And what was the motivation of releasing great music, but appealing where the people will buy the CD or the vinyl and look at the color, the graphic, the book inside, and it was different, right? So it was.
I guess the main reason is that we are complete idiots. Nobody, I don't know if anybody does expensive covers, being a band in our level, having no international label behind them. But anyway, I'm very happy that you recognize that, because it really happened. Yes, that happened when Musea released our first 2 albums. But after that, as I had our own small family-owned label, Seacrest, we decided that Seacrest will continue. And I have this stupid ideology that if you make it, let's try to make the best out of it. If you don't, what's the point of making anything? If you do so and so. I bought one CD from one very great prog guitar player, let's not say his name, but it was jewel case with a 2-page booklet, only one slip. And it was like a 24 euros. And the album was not very good, and I was very disappointed. And one day Marco saw this very nice looking package, and he presented to me that, what do you think? I said, it looks great. Let's do those if we just can. And of course, because the CD market is what it is, we cannot ask for the very expensive price for those. So you have to be quite precise to keep the costs down, but you cannot raise the price too much. So I try to keep the prices down. But we feel that we are, I hope this doesn't sound stupid, but we want to feel that we are making a work of art as a one entity. And the cover artwork is part of the music. It supports the music, and hopefully the music supports also the artwork. So that's one reason why we are not in Spotify that much, just some songs, because we feel that we are so old-fashioned that we still feel that, at least myself, that I sometimes like to look through the booklet and see the history of the songs, who is playing, and some explanations, even about the recording information and whatsoever. And I feel very fortunate that I have gotten to know a lot of people around the world who still think that the same thing. Obviously, you as well. That
Yeah.
music is more than just what comes from the streaming. That it has
Yeah.
more value than
Absolutely.
money.
On the other hand, right? On the other hand, for people, if you are a new band, right, whatever the name, right, and you want to get
Yes,
some exposure, right? Spotify, on one hand, it is great. Like people for me, I'm always looking for the podcast to interview new musician, look at recommendation and people all over the world.
of course.
For
Yes,
for a strategy, marketing, motivation for me is important, right? On the other hand, for musicians like yourself, you don't get paid any money. You need to have like 1 million hits to get $20, right? So it's a
that's the
ripoff, right? But
that's the
on the other hand, the
problem.
exposure
Yes,
is the problem, right? And then
yes,
nowadays, young people, right? They they don't buy CDs that much. They don't vinyl. Yeah, they buy vinyl. It's not my case because I buy a lot, but young people, they are going there so fast in their life that they download an MP3 or the quality maybe is not great. They listen 10 seconds, next song, next song, next song. It's like, I don't know, in my opinion, a stupid way to live a life, right? If
I
you don't want to
agree.
take half an hour to listen to an album, why you spend 2 minutes and how, I don't know, it's crazy to live like way. And in your case, right?
Yes,
The music can be great, but the inner, the picture, the inner book, that's important. So that I understand why. Well, yeah, we can put a little bit in YouTube, right? Because you don't have that much
yes,
music. Get like a teaser for people get to know you.
yes, yeah. That's
Need to
what we
make it
do.
because art, you cannot show the art, you cannot show images on Spotify or on so forth. So it's right.
Yes, that's true. And at that, so we were happy to get Ed, and we have had a close collaboration with him ever since. He's doing fantastic work, and it really supports our music. So I there has been no turning back. It just became our standard to have these 6-panel threefold CD packages with a rather extensive booklets. And so, but I don't want. I hope I am not bragging, but it's just who we are. We feel that we
Absolutely,
try to
right.
respect the listener by doing that, and we hope that the music is also that good that it stands up with the package. And we have this
Absolutely.
also this one thing that maybe separates us from the others, that it was especially after Secrets of Disguise. I already mixed that, but after that, Marco said that now, Kimmo, it's time for you to start mixing and mastering our albums. I told Marco that I am complete amateur. I don't know how to mix or master, but let's try, because it was fascinating, and I had my mentor in music, my very good friend Tommi Liuhala. He's a Finnish prog legend. He worked already with Wigwam and many program bands in 70s, and Tommi Tommi has been teaching me about mixing and mastering and those things. So I guess one day it was time to go my own. I'm still an amateur, but at least you know what you are after and you try to achieve that. And because we are so old school, I still love to have dynamics in our music. I don't make it to be listened to in a very noisy cars or something. I make it for those same kind of freaks as I am, that they sit down and they take a glass of wine and they really listen what comes there. So then there can be strong parts and the low parts, and that's how I want to do it. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's what we what we have been trying to do for these years.
Yeah, and that's really strategy, right? When they follow a good strategy going forward, you need to differentiate yourself, right? You don't want to be one of many, man, right? So you are different because the drawing, not you do the match, not streaming that match, a little bit, a teaser where people get to know, but that's what you differentiate yourself. And eventually you and your family end up where they created the Secrets oil label, right? And for Samurai albums, there's your solo project, feel free to elaborate of the goal of that particular record label, how difficult it was.